And our political analyst John Keller has more on what is next for Senator Warren and the big decision of who she will endorse in the race.
At this point, does Joe Biden even need her endorsement? I don't think he does. There's also a little bit of bad blood, if you go back far enough, between Senator Warren and Joe Biden. Sanders is the one who needs her endorsement at this point in order to try to reverse this tidal wave of Biden backing. And I'm not so sure she's going to be so quick to give it.
Well, Elizabeth Warren took her first steps toward running for president back on December 31st of 2018 when she released a video to announce she was launching an exploratory committee. She was the first major candidate to do that. Less than 2 months later in February, she officially launched her campaign with a rally in Lawrence and an endorsement from Congressman Joe Kennedy. By October, she took the lead in some national polls and in fundraising, overtaking Joe Biden. But then last month, she finished third in the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary, the beginning of the end for her candidacy. And again, we do have a crew. Elizabeth Warren is speaking after ending her Democratic campaign for president. She's outside of her Cambridge home now. Let's listen in.
Yes. You and the Bales. Okay. All right. So I announced this morning that I am suspending my campaign for president. I say this with a deep sense of gratitude for every single person who got in this fight, every single person who tried on a new idea, every single person who just moved a little in their notion of what a president of the United States should look like. I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight for the hardworking folks across this country who've gotten the short end of the stick over and over. That's been the fight of my life, and it will continue to be so.
Senator, what guidance would you give to your supporters who don't know who to support now?
Well, let's take a deep breath and spend a little time on that. We don't have to decide that this minute.
And I wonder what your message would be to the women and girls who feel like we're left with two white men to decide between.
I know. One of the hardest parts of this is all those pinky promises and all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years. That's going to be hard.
Senator, why do you think, Senator?
Will you be making an endorsement today? We know that you spoke with both Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders yesterday.
Not today. Not today. I need some space around this, and want to take a little time to think a little more. I've been spending a lot of time right now on the question of suspending and also making sure that this works as best we can for our staff, for our team, for our volunteers.
So
Senator, what?
I'm sorry?
It could be coming, but just not right now.
Not right now.
Senator, what?
I know that your campaign manager, Roger Lau, said on the staff call today that he had no regrets. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, I do. I have no regrets at all. This has been the honor of a lifetime. 10 years ago, I was teaching a few blocks from here and talking about what was broken in America and ideas for how to fix it. And pretty much nobody wanted to hear it. And I've had a chance to get out there and talk with millions of people. And, we have ideas now that we talk about that we just weren't talking about even a year ago. A 2-cent wealth tax and universal child care that could be real. We could make it happen. And canceling student loan debt for 43 million Americans and raising Social Security payments. Those are life-changing events for people. And we can actually do this. So I'm delighted to have been here and honored to have had this chance. I was told at the beginning of this whole undertaking that there are 2 lanes. A progressive lane that Bernie Sanders is the incumbent for and a moderate lane that Joe Biden is the incumbent for. And there's no room for anyone else in this. I thought that wasn't right. But evidently, I was wrong.
Senator, what do you think you weren't able to resonate more with voters and win any states?
As I said, I think that I was told when I first got into this, there are 2 lanes. And I thought it was possible that that wasn't the case, that there was more room and more room to run another kind of campaign. But evidently that wasn't the case.
Senator, was it especially painful to lose your home state, Massachusetts?
No, I am deeply grateful to the people of Massachusetts. Look, back in 2012, they took a chance on someone who had never run for public office before. They ousted a very popular incumbent Republican senator to give me a chance to stand up on a bigger platform and fight for their families, and I am deeply grateful for that. They returned me to the Senate in 2018, and I'm deeply grateful for that. They're the reason I'm in this fight, and they're the reason I am able to stand here today. No.
Annie right here.
I'm sorry. Hi, Annie.
Hi, Senator Warren. Two questions.
Sure.
I saw you vote 2 days ago for yourself.
I did.
Could you, two things, reflect a little bit about what that was like for you? And then the other question is, could you talk a little bit about the role that you think that gender played in this campaign?
Yeah. So, it was, I stood at that voting booth and I looked down and I saw my name on the ballot. And I thought, wow, kiddo, you're not in Oklahoma anymore. That it really was a moment of thinking about how my mother and dad, if they were still here, would feel about this. I had gotten a long email from my nephew and how proud his dad, my brother, is, and how they were all had their plans to vote and had met other people. And it's these long ties. For that moment standing in the booth, I missed my mom and my daddy. Gender in this race, you know, that is the trap question for every woman. If you say, yeah, there was sexism in this race, everyone says whiner. And if you say, no, there was no sexism, about a bazillion women think, what planet do you live on? I promise you this, I will have a lot more to say on that subject later on.
Senator, advice to your supporters right now looking for a candidate. What is your advice to them? Obviously, I know you're not endorsing anybody, but what is your advice to them?
Let's take a deep breath and think about this for a little bit longer before we all settle in.
I wonder, I've heard you. Senator, how long 2 days for you, or multiple days, to make this decision? What were you thinking about? What informed? What was the final step?
This is the last. You know, a big part of it is to think about all the people who turned their lives upside down to be part of this campaign. All of the staffers who moved and worked long hours, gave up jobs to be here, took leaves from school, to think about what works for them. This isn't just about me. This is a whole lot of people who were a big part of this, and also our volunteers, to try to think through. For all those people who already have invested so many hours and so much of their heart in the phone calls and the door knocks and the coming to the office and help clean things up and keep it all going, and thinking about all those pinky promises. You know, I take those pinky promises seriously. So those were the things I needed to think through, and how we make all those pieces work at least as best we can for everyone. And one last thing. It's about all the people who are affected by all the issues I've talked about, whether they got involved in my fight or someone else's fight, or even not at all. But however we talk about this, there still is $1.5 trillion of student loan debt outstanding. There are still tens of millions of people across this country who one bad medical diagnosis and they're upside down financially. There are still mamas and daddies all across this country who can't finish their education, can't take on jobs because they can't find access to decent childcare that they can afford. And I had to think a lot about where is the best place for me to go to keep fighting those fights, because those problems don't disappear when I stand here in front of you. Those problems go on, and my job is to keep fighting and to fight as smartly and effectively as I can.
Senator, Senator.
It is a very difficult day for Senator Warren, for her staff, and for her millions of supporters. You know, I've been in politics for a little while, and I have seen many, many campaigns, including campaigns that have spent a lot of money, kind of fade away. The message fades away the day after the candidate drops out or loses. That will not be the case with Senator Warren. She has run a very strong, issue-oriented campaign, and the reason that her campaign ideas will remain viable for many, many years is she has changed political consciousness in America, which at the end of the day is the most important thing that any candidate could do. What Senator Warren has successfully done is raise the issue of income and wealth inequality and the idea that we need a wealth tax in America. And some of you may have noticed that just a few days ago, Robert Rubin, former Secretary of Treasury under Bill Clinton, said, you know what? Sanders and Warren are talking about a wealth tax. Maybe that's something we have to consider. These are a titan from Wall Street. Senator Warren has been very strong in understanding that the current healthcare system is dysfunctional. She had differences of opinion with me about how to best go forward, but she remained a staunch advocate for Medicare for all. And believe me, that issue will become more and more apparent to the American people as we deal with this coronavirus and the idea that there are millions of people in America today who are unable to go to a doctor even when they have symptoms of this terrible illness because they have no insurance, they don't have any money. And what Senator Warren has said from day one, and what I say, is that healthcare is a human right. We should not be spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as the people of any other nation and have 87 million uninsured or underinsured just to make huge profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies. Senator Warren has been strong on that. Senator Warren has been very strong in making it clear that we have a corrupt political system in which billionaires are buying elections. And right now, what you're seeing is Wall Street opening up its checkbook to Joe Biden. You're seeing Mike Bloomberg, worth some $60 billion, prepared to support Joe Biden. And that is what a corrupt political system is. What democracy is one person, one vote. What a corrupt political system is billionaires buying elections. And Senator Warren has been very, very strong on that. And Senator Warren obviously has been very strong on the issue of women's rights. And right now we know that throughout this country, women are under political assault. We're seeing it at the Supreme Court level, we're seeing it at the state legislative level, we're seeing it in Congress, where you have politicians who want to take away, among many other things, a woman's right to control her own body. And Senator Warren has been a leader in fighting to protect women's rights. Let me say, as I've said many times, I've known Joe Biden for many years. He's a friend. He's a decent person. But Joe's record is a very, very different record than mine. His vision for the future of this country is very, very different. I'm going to be in Michigan very shortly, and I will be talking in Michigan about the fact that Joe supported disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and PNTR with China, which have cost this country millions of good-paying jobs, devastating to the Midwest in this country. I will be talking about the fact that, about whether or not anyone thinks seriously that we're going to bring about the kind of real changes this country needs when your campaign is being funded by Wall Street and the healthcare industry and all of the powerful special interests in this country. You don't bring about real change when you are dependent for your campaign fundraising from the rich and the powerful. We're going to talk about the Wall Street bailout that I vigorously opposed, that Joe Biden supported. We're going to talk about a bankruptcy bill supported by the credit card industry, which has been devastating for young people and working people in this country. And we're going to talk about climate change. I happen to believe that we need sweeping, real changes in our energy system, that a moderate, middle-of-the-way approach is not going to be able to deal with the existential threat of climate change. So I like Joe personally, and I will do everything in my power to make sure this is not in kind of ugly personal attacks like, you know, the Trump people engage in. This is going to be an issue-oriented campaign from my perspective. Joe and I have very different voting records. We have a very different vision for this country, and you will see that now that it's a two-person race come out pretty clearly. Carol?
Senator, just to follow up on Senator Warren, would you be disappointed if you don't get her endorsement?
Well, it's not a question of me personally. I would love to have her disappointment, but today what I'm doing is reaching out to the millions of strong supporters that she had, and to tell them that, you know, while Senator Warren and I had nuances of differences, we did, that there is no question that her agenda, what she fought for in the campaign, was far closer to what I am fighting for than what Joe Biden believes in. And we would welcome those supporters. Okay, we'll see you guys in Arizona. Thank you.
All right, we have some breaking news for you all. According to reporting by the New York Times and several other outlets at this point, Elizabeth Warren is planning to suspend her campaign. She will announce it in a call with her staff later this afternoon. Sagar, it's just remarkable to think about. In a lot of ways, Elizabeth Warren, she had a moment when she was a Senate when she looked like she might be the person who really pulled it all off.
Right.
She had positioned herself smartly on the left, but with this message of, I'll be a team player, I'll work with you, I'm not going to burn it all down the way that this crazy guy over here is, but I'm smart and I can complete my sentences, unlike this guy over here. It looked like that was going to work, and then it all kind of crumbled for her.
Wheels came off the bus for her on Medicare for All. I mean, we'll never forget it, right? I mean, she was right there, and she was saying all the right things to the left. She was saying, I'm not going to take any money from a billionaire, but I'll still do it at the DNC fundraiser. I'm for Medicare for All, but I understand, the way that politics works. There seemed to be this middle ground, which was working. I mean, for a time, we'll remember the Democratic establishment. I mean, Biden couldn't speak, so they said, okay, no, that all bets are off. Bernie is just a step too far for me. Now, Elizabeth Warren, that's somebody that I can do business with. And it was all driven by her elite love in the media. People in the media love Elizabeth Warren. They like to pretend that they're on the left without actually being on the left. And when they really say they are, what they mean is that they are intersectionally woke. And she leaned far too into that, I think, because she saw how much good earned media that she was getting.
Right.
But the problem is that the message underlying her Medicare for All message showed that she was not serious about passing health care in the first days of her administration. And because health care was the #1 issue in the primary, it was devastating. It was just a blow she never recovered from.
The media wanted a women's candidate.
Yeah, right.
But the public,
I'm already seeing it. Oh, now a woman won't be president again.
The public, by and large, did not. They just wanted someone who was with them on the issues, who could beat Trump, et cetera. And so, with Bernie, you have someone who they agree with on the issues and is exciting, this new direction. With Biden, you have this restoration argument, this idea that we think is false. But anyway, this idea that he could beat Donald Trump. Warren tried to play both sides and it ended up not working out for her at all. And increasingly as the campaign went on, notably when she accused Bernie Sanders of, being a secret sexist and all of that, she increasingly leaned into her status as a woman in the race. Right. I think partly they were, out of concerns that people weren't gravitating towards her because they were worried about her electability. So they thought, well, let's have this conversation about electability outright. And ultimately, it ended up being really the sort of death knell for her campaign.
Yeah, it really did. I guess the real question, this is what you talked about today, which is Elizabeth Warren going to endorse Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden? Now, we have reporting from Alex Thompson, or nothing. And that actually basically validates Alex Thompson's reporting. He just tweeted this. Warren is dropping out today, will alert her staff shortly. Someone with the campaign tells him, Alex Thompson of Politico, that she is contemplating not endorsing Bernie, or even endorsing Biden. So I think that, if there's a more likely scenario, it's that she sits it out.
I think that's probably the most likely thing.
The second most likely is that she does endorse Bernie. It would be such a repudiation of her entire career in order to endorse Biden. But the fact that she's leaving the door open confirms to me what I think she's going to do, which is she's probably not going to endorse, and then she's going to make sure she'll endorse Biden, if he wins the majority of the delegates or whatever, something like that, and then he's going to go to him, or she's going to go to him and use the cachet as an endorsement in order to say you have to hire these people in the administration, give me Secretary of the Treasury, and she's going to continue playing the kind of inside game. And she's just a player in the game. That's what she said from the very beginning. I think she's going to act like
what she laid out is exactly what she did in 2016.
That's what she did with him.
Exactly what she did in 2016. And look, let's be real. In 2016, as in right now, Bernie Sanders needed some validators. He needed some people to come on board and make his thing like grounded in American political context, say this guy's not scary, I work with him, I like him, right? We're friendly, et cetera, et cetera. She could have done that for him in 2016, and she had even maybe more of a constituency then, more of a sort of movement constituency behind her that could have made the difference. She didn't do that. And so I think for anyone to hope that she'll behave differently this time around, look, I'm hopeful, but I don't expect it, is what I would say.
Some more we can bring you from journalist Yashar Ali, who I trust very much. He says, the Times is reporting Warren doesn't plan on endorsing when she plans to speak to the press later. I'm not surprised. He's been told that if she endorses, it'll be after a serious political policy discussion and negotiation with Biden and Sanders. And so I think that once again gives away the game about the negotiation part in particular, because she can read the tea leaves. She knows the establishment is all in against Sanders. Realistically, if she were to endorse Sanders, would it be all the lift that, necessarily to put him across the finish line? And if she's going to do that, in her mind, she would burn all the potential political capital that she could get through a negotiated compromise with Biden and then actually have some influence in the administration. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm saying this is the calculus that she's going to be displaying.
Yeah.
And I think, it seems very likely that that's the way that things are going to pan out.
It's part of why I advocated for not just let's try to get Elizabeth Warren's endorsements from the Bernie team, but that they should actually offer her the slot on the ticket, because I think that's the only inducement that could potentially bring her on board. Because look, if Joe Biden gets first of all, Joe Biden's not going to pick her as vice president. And if he gets the nomination, if he ends up in the White House, then whoever his VP is going to be next up to bat. Elizabeth Warren, she's very energetic. She's very, she reads as younger than the, 70-year-old men in the race. But the reality is she's also a septuagenarian. She doesn't have that many more years where she could run for president. Her only shot at this point at actually getting there would be on a joint Warren-Bernie ticket. It's a long shot. Right? And I think she has liabilities for any ticket she would be on heading into November, demonstrated by her weakness in this performance in this primary. Not even being able to win your home state of Massachusetts is a disastrous thing. But the Sanders people need her right now. They really need something to change the game, and fast, because yes, Joe Biden is very weak in terms of his political performance, but he's not going to have to do anything between now and Tuesday, when people head to the polls in critical states like Washington and Michigan, where Bernie really has to make almost like a final stand at this point.
Michigan he's got to go all in. In a head-to-head matchup, we said here, if it's Biden v. Sanders, Biden probably wins from the beginning. Now we're actually in that scenario. Now, Bernie overtook him a little bit in the head-to-heads with Biden I think a week ago. We don't have updated looks, but my bet is it's probably not in his favor the way that it was, just because of that consolidation. And if she sits it out, I think Sanders is truly finished. Because, even if she does endorse him, I just don't see it. I don't see where how are you going to convince suburban voters to give you a chance? And especially when your young voter model is not turning out in the same way. This is really, I have to marvel at how the establishment was able to coalesce around Biden so quickly. And then basically Warren staying in just that extra day on Super Tuesday. That essentially kills Sanders with the delegate count. And now in the head-to-heads...
And the media narrative count.
It's very possible. And the media narrative count. Earned media is king. It's very possible now Joe Biden could win a majority of the delegates going into the convention. And this all this convention talk is moot.
I think the convention talk is moot anyway. And Bernie has said if Biden wins a plurality, he'll drop out and back him, which I think he would do. Biden, on the other hand, I don't think he would do that. But... it does strike me. It's worth remembering how Elizabeth Warren came into politics. That opposition to that bad bankruptcy bill, and who was pushing it? Joe Biden, who was known as the senator from MBNA, whose coziness with the credit card industry is legendary. She wrote about him. You can't call yourself an ally to women in the morning and then sell them out in the evening. Very critical. He is antithetical to everything that she has said that she believes in, and he represents everything that she has said that she abhors about the political system.
But so did Hillary.
And so did Hillary. And she'd been critical of Hillary in the exact same way, and in fact, the exact same bill, although Biden was almost more sort of tied up in that whole thing.
Right.
He's backed by, you're talking about Joe Biden, a guy backed by Michael Bloomberg now. So if Warren decides to sit it out, or especially if she decides to actually back Joe Biden, I can tell you, progressives will never forgive her for that. She will then just be another senator. I think you could expect potentially a primary challenge. So this is a real fork in the road for her. She's been trying to straddle the fence between the establishment and the anti-establishment. Now she's got to once and for all choose, and no one's going to forget that choice.
We'll see what she chooses. I'm not, I think she'll take the Craven choice, which I know everybody loves whenever I use that here. Look, we got to remember who this person is. And I lay this out. You cannot trust what she says, because that was her brand whenever it became. But there has been an ethos of dishonesty that has pervaded her professional and political career from the very beginning. And I'm talking about the DNA story, because that's what it was from, she used this fake heritage in order to advance her political career and advance her early career at Harvard University. And then, I'm looking again, I forgot about this registration card when she registered as American Indian in the State Bar of Texas in the 1980s. She never had a coherent answer for why she faked her heritage and traded off of this other than to appear novelty. She, again, we never got the full story on this, but it's possible that she lied about being fired for being pregnant in order to stir up sympathy at a rally. She's done so many of these things at so many different times that she's a fundamentally untrustworthy person. And that's how I've always looked at it. I've always seen her as a wolf in sheep's clothing, because I looked at her and I said, this is the person who leans so far into all this intersectional race woke language, the gender pronouns and all that in her Twitter bio. She was the first to push decriminalizing illegal border crossings and all this. And I said, this person isn't somebody who is like Bernie and just wants to pass
to actually make change. Yeah.
And that came out when her plan came out. Right. That's how we knew. We said, with that plan, she's not actually serious. This is a BS financing mechanism. Hers is a presidency where she's going to get there on day one and just start issuing all these executive orders on culture war issues with the pink scarf that'll be trailing in the wind. At least I don't have to live to see that, thank God.
Well, and you wonder for organizations, for progressive organizations like the Working Families Party, that backed her, thinking that she would be a progressive champion. If she turns around and either stays out or endorses Biden, you have to wonder about how those organizations are going to feel about the choice that they made. And look, I think you're right. I think it's very unlikely that she actually throws in with her values, looking at the way that the political winds are blowing. But I think we'll find out soon.
And we'll bring it all to you on Rising tomorrow. We'll have more
see you then.
for this.